I almost didn't stop. That's the thing I come back to, even now. I almost rode straight past. The house had been empty for 12 years and I had ridden past it so many times that I had stopped seeing it the way you stop seeing things that have always been there. The broken fence along the road. The overgrown front path. The porch boards that had gone soft in the second winter and that I had replaced without telling anyone, because there was no one to tell. I almost rode straight past. But the lamp was on. I pulled up my horse and sat there in the road for a moment, looking at that window. One lamp, burning low, the kind of light that means someone just arrived and hasn't settled in yet. The kind of light that means someone is standing in a room they haven't been in for a long time, not sure yet what to do with it. I tied the horse at the gate and went up the path. I knocked. A long silence. Then footsteps, slow and careful, like someone moving through a dark house they half remembered. The door opened. She was nothing like I had expected. I don't know what I had expected. I had heard things over the years, fragments, the way you hear things in a small town even when nobody is talking directly to you. That Ruth Callahan had left Grover's Pass at 26 after her father's business failed and something else happened that nobody said out loud. That she had gone east. That she had made a life somewhere else. That she wasn't coming back. She was 38 years old. Dark hair pulled back quickly, like she'd done it in a hurry. Travel dust on her coat. Eyes the color of deep water, the kind of green that shifts depending on the light, and right now, in the lamplight, they were tired and careful and holding something back that was too big to hold for much longer. She looked at me like she was trying to figure out if she knew me. "You're the one who fixed my porch," she said. It wasn't a question. I didn't know how she knew. Maybe she didn't, maybe she was guessing. But she said it like a fact. "I'm your neighbor," I said. "Owen Marsh. My land runs south of yours." She looked at me for another moment. Then she said, "The fence along the road. The front path. The window latch on the east side." She had noticed everything. She had been here maybe 2 hours and she had noticed everything. "That was you too," she said. "Yes," I said. She looked at me steadily. "Why?" I thought about the honest answer. "The land needed it," I said. She held my gaze for a moment. Then she said, "Come in. I'll put the kettle on. My name is Owen Marsh. I'm 29 years old, and I have lived on the land south of the Callahan property for 6 years, since I bought it from a man who was tired of Wyoming winters and wanted to go somewhere flat. I run cattle. I fix fences. I rise before the sun because the cattle don't wait. And for 6 years, I have also, quietly and without telling anyone, been keeping the Callahan property from falling apart. I didn't start out meaning to. The first time was the fence along the road, the second winter I was here. A post had come down in a storm when it was sitting in the road and it was a hazard, so I moved it. Then I looked at the rest of the fence and the rest of the fence was in bad shape, so I fixed that too. Then I noticed the porch boards and the window latch and the roof over the back room that was letting water in. I told myself each time that it was practical. That a falling down property next door was bad for everyone. That I would have done it for any neighbor. That was true. It was also not the whole truth. The whole truth was that I had heard the story of Ruth Callahan in pieces over 6 years, the way you hear things in a town that knew someone before you arrived. And the pieces had made a picture of a woman who had left something here that she couldn't carry with her and couldn't come back for. And I had thought, more than once, without examining it too carefully, that when she came back the house should still be standing. She had come back because her mother was dying. She told me that at the kitchen table, both hands wrapped around her cup, looking at the table instead of at me. My mother wrote to me 2 months ago. She's at the Henderson's place, she's been there since she couldn't manage alone. She has maybe another month. "I'm sorry," I said. She looked up. "Are you?" I held her gaze. Yes. She looked back at the table. Most people in this town aren't, she said. Most people in this town thought my mother was foolish for the choices she made. For staying after my father left. For keeping the house. For believing things would come right. Did they? I asked. Come right? No, she said simply. But she stayed anyway. She said that quietly, and there was something in it that wasn't quite grief and wasn't quite pride, something between the two that didn't have a clean name. We were quiet for a moment. Why did you leave? I asked. Then, quickly, you don't have to answer that. She looked at me. She was assessing something, the way people assess whether a question is safe to answer or whether the person asking it is safe to answer it to. There was a man, she said finally. I was 25. He was the kind of man who made you believe things. She stopped. When it ended, I couldn't stay here with everyone knowing. Couldn't walk down the main street and be the girl that happened to. So I left. Where did you go? I asked. Denver first, she said. Then Kansas City. Then Chicago for 4 years. I worked in a dress shop, then a hotel, then I managed the accounts for a textile company. She said all of this the way someone says a list, matter of fact, like she was reading it from a page. I built something. It's small, but it's mine. Then your mother wrote, I said. Then my mother wrote, she said. And I came back. She looked around the kitchen. The walls, the shelves, the window with its new latch. This house should be falling down, she said. It wanted to, I said. She looked at me. Why did you stop it? I looked at my hands on the table. Because some things are worth keeping, I said. Even when nobody's watching. She was quiet for a long moment. The lamp threw its small circle of warmth. Outside, the Wyoming night was settling in cold and clear, the first stars showing above the ridge line. She didn't ask me anything else that night. But when I stood to leave she said, I'll be here through the end of the month at least. Longer if she holds on. I nodded. If you need anything, I said, I'm south of the fence line. She nodded once. Good night, Mr. Marsh. Owen, I said. She looked at me. Good night, Owen. I went back down the path to my horse. I didn't look back. But I heard the door close softly behind me, and something in the sound of it felt different from all the times I had ridden past that house in 6 years. Like a door closing on one thing and not yet open on another. Before we go any further, if this story is already sitting somewhere deep in your chest, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and leave us a like. It costs you nothing and it means everything to this channel. Now let's get back to Ruth Callahan and what it means to come home to a place you left behind. The town noticed her, of course. Grover's Pass was small enough that a stranger was news, and Ruth Callahan coming back after 12 years was more than news. It was the kind of thing that got discussed over counters and at church socials and in the quiet spaces between sentences where the real conversations in small towns actually happen. I heard things. People who remembered her father's failure. People who remembered the man who had made her believe things. People who had opinions about women who left and then came back as if leaving was something you could simply undo. I didn't repeat any of it. It wasn't mine to repeat. And it wasn't my place to tell her what people were saying because she already knew. She had grown up here. She knew exactly what a small town remembered and exactly how long it kept remembering. She never mentioned it. She held her head level on the main street and she said good morning to people who had known her before, and she did not apologize for having left or for having come back, and after a week or two the talking settled down the way talking always does when the person it's about refuses to be interesting on its terms. I respected that more than I could easily say. She went to see her mother every morning. I knew because I could see her from my north pasture, the small figure on horseback moving down the road toward the Henderson place before the sun was fully up. Same time every morning. Same straight-backed posture in the saddle. She didn't look over toward my land. She was focused on where she was going. I didn't approach her. She had enough to carry without me adding to it. But on the fourth day I found a small basket on my front porch when I came in from the morning feed. Inside it, wrapped in a clean cloth, was a loaf of bread. No note. Just the bread, still warm. I stood on the porch holding it and looked south toward the Callahan property for a moment. Then I went inside and ate a piece standing at the kitchen counter and thought that it was very good bread and that someone who had spent years managing hotel accounts and textile books in Chicago had not forgotten how to bake. I left the basket back at her gate the next morning with a jar of honey from the hives I kept on the east side of the property. No note. She would know who it was from. This went on for 2 weeks. Small things left at gates. A basket of apples from my trees. A jar of preserved beans. A bundle of firewood when the temperature dropped hard at the end of the week. Nothing said. Nothing explained. Just the quiet back and forth of two people acknowledging each other without making too much of it. On the 12th day she was sitting on her porch when I rode past on my way back from town. She raised a hand. I pulled up. The mother of one of my students used to do this, she said. Leave things. When my mother was first sick and I didn't know anyone in the new town and I was managing alone. She said she knew what it was to need something without knowing how to ask for it. I sat on my horse and listened. You remind me of her, Ruth said. She paused. That's a compliment. I understand, I said. She looked at me for a moment. Will you sit? She nodded at the other chair on the porch. I've been talking to my mother all morning and she's sleeping now and I need to talk to someone who can answer back. I tied the horse and Saturday. We talked for 2 hours. She told me about Chicago, about the textile company, about a city that never went quiet and that she had learned to love for exactly that reason, because the noise meant she didn't have to listen to her own thoughts. She told me about the women she had worked with, the ones who had built small independent lives in the cracks that the world left for them, and the pride she had in being one of them. She asked me about the land, about the cattle, about what had brought me to Wyoming at 23 with enough money to buy a struggling property and the stubbornness to make it work. My father, I said. He believed in land. Said everything else could be taken but land, if you held it right, was yours. He died before he could buy any himself. So I did it for him. She looked at me. How old were you when he died? 21, I said. She nodded slowly. The things we do for the people we lose, she said quietly. I came back here for my mother. I've been fighting with myself about it for 2 months. Telling myself I had a life there, a real one. That coming back didn't mean anything except geography. And now? I asked. She looked at the house. Now I'm not sure what it means, she said. But I'm here. The service was on a Thursday. Small, the way her mother would have wanted it. Ruth stood at the front of the church straight-backed and composed, and I sat in the back because I had not been invited and had not been not invited and I thought she might want someone there who didn't need anything from her. Afterward, outside in the cold grey morning, Mrs. Henderson pressed Ruth's hand and said something I couldn't hear. Ruth nodded. She looked across the small gathered crowd and found me standing at the edge of it, and she held my gaze for just a moment, long enough to mean something, and then she turned back to the people who needed her attention. I went home and put a soup on the stove. That evening I went to the house. Ruth opened the door. She had been crying, I could see that, though she had composed herself by the time she answered, the way she did everything, with the careful steadiness of someone who had taught herself not to fall apart in front of people. But her eyes were raw. I didn't say anything. I held up the covered dish I had brought, soup, because it was what you brought, because it was something warm and practical and people who were grieving needed to eat even when they didn't want to. She stepped back and let me in. I put the soup on the stove. She sat at the kitchen table. I sat across from her. Neither of us said anything for a long time. She was a good woman, Ruth said finally. She wasn't practical. She wasn't wise, not in the way the world means wise. She believed things would come right when there was no evidence for it. She held on to things she should have let go of. She looked at her hands. I used to think that was weakness, she said. Now I think it was the bravest thing I ever saw. I looked at her across the table. This woman who had built a life in the cracks the world left for her and come back to a house she had left behind and sat every morning with a woman who was leaving and hadn't fallen apart where anyone could see. You're very like her, I said. She looked up at me quickly. Not in the way you think, I said. Not in the holding on to things you should let go. In the brave part. She was quiet for a moment. Then she looked back at her hands. I'm going back, she said. To Chicago. After the service. After the house is settled. I have a life there. I know, I said. She looked at me. You've never once asked me to stay. No, I said. Why not? Because you didn't come back for me, I said. You came back for her. And that was right. And I wasn't going to put something on top of that that didn't belong there. She looked at me for a long time. That careful, assessing look. Reading something. What if I wanted you to? She said quietly. Ask me to stay. I looked at her steadily. Then I want to ask you something first, I said. She waited. The house, I said. What are you going to do with it? She blinked. That wasn't what she had expected. I haven't decided, she said carefully. Because if you sell it, I said, I'll buy it. And I'll keep it the way it is. And if you ever come back again it'll be standing. She stared at me. And if you don't sell it, I said, if you decide to keep it, then you have a reason to come back that isn't me. And when you come back, if you want to sit on that porch and talk to someone who can answer back, I'll be south of the fence line. She was very still. And if at some point, I said, after you've come back enough times that it stops feeling like coming back and starts feeling like coming home, you decide you want to stay, I'll be here for that too. I paused. But I'm not asking you to stay today, I said. Today you just lost your mother. Today you just need someone to sit with. She looked at me for a long time. Then she said, very quietly, you fixed my porch before you ever met me. Yes, I said. You kept this house standing for 6 years for someone you'd never seen. Yes. Why? She asked. The real reason this time. I looked at her across the table, this woman with tired careful eyes and bread she baked from memory and a life she had built from nothing twice over. Because the land needed it, I said. And because I had a feeling the person it belonged to was worth coming back to it. She looked at her hands. Then she looked up. I'm not staying today, she said. I know, I said. But I'm not selling the house. I looked at her. She almost smiled. South of the fence line, she said. Yes, I said. She came back in the spring. I knew before I saw her. The same way I had known for 6 years when the fence needed mending or the roof was letting water in, not because anyone told me but because I had been paying attention long enough that the land and everything on it spoke to me in a language I had learned to read. The lamp was on in the window on the 1st of April. Same lamp. Same low steady glow. But different now because I knew whose hand had lit it. I didn't go to the door that first night. I let her settle. Let her come back to the house on her own terms in the dark and find it the way she had left it and understand again, quietly, without ceremony, that it had been kept. She came to my gate the next morning. I was at the fence when I saw her coming down the road, straight backed on the horse she had bought in town, the one she had chosen herself on the same quiet, careful basis on which she appeared to make every decision that mattered. She pulled up at my gate. "You kept it," she said. I looked at her. "I said I would," I said. "You said you'd buy it if I sold it," she said. "I didn't sell it." "I know," I said. "I kept it anyway." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, "I've been thinking about what you said. About it stopping feeling like coming back and starting feeling like coming home." I waited. "It started on the train," she said. "Somewhere west of Denver. Before I could even see the mountains yet." She looked at the fence line, at the land stretching south toward my ranch house. "I think I've been coming home for longer than I knew," she said quietly. I opened the gate. She came back in the spring. Then again in the summer. Then she came back in October and stayed through the winter, and in February she stopped calling it coming back and started calling it home. We married in April, on a Saturday that felt like the first real day of warmth after a long cold season, which it was. The whole of Grover's Pass came out because small towns show up for the things that matter, and this one, they had decided, mattered. Some of them had known Ruth Callahan before she left. Some of them had watched her leave. All of them watched her walk into that church in a dress the color of early spring grass, steady and unhurried and entirely herself. She walked alone. Of course she did. She had walked alone through Chicago and Kansas City and Denver and 12 years of a life she had built without anyone's help. She wasn't going to stop now. She looked at me from halfway down the aisle with those deep water eyes that shifted color in every light, and in the April morning coming through the church windows they were clear and certain, and something else that was only for me and that I was done trying to find words for. I told her that night, at the kitchen table of the house that I had kept standing for 6 years before I knew her face, that she was the most quietly determined person I had ever watched walk back towards something that had hurt her. She told me that was a strange thing to say to someone on their wedding night. I said it was still true. She looked at me across the table, this man who had fixed her fence and replaced her porch boards and kept her mother's house standing and never once asked her to stay until she was ready to hear it. "You are a very strange man, Owen Marsh," she said. I said I supposed I was. She smiled. "The real one. The one I had only seen twice before and had been waiting for without admitting it." Outside, the Wyoming April was arriving soft and green. Inside, for the first time, the house that had been empty for 12 years was full of something it had been waiting for. Not furniture. Not warmth. Not even people. Just the feeling that the people inside it were exactly where they were supposed to be. There's no gunfight in this story. No burning barn. No villain riding in from the hills. Just a woman who left because she had to and came back because she couldn't not, and a man who kept a light burning in a window she couldn't see from Chicago but that was there every night just in case. Ruth Callahan left Grover's Pass at 26 with nothing but what she could carry. She built a life that was small and entirely hers. And when she came back at 38 to sit beside a woman who was leaving, she found that someone had been quietly holding the door open the whole time. Not waiting for her. Just keeping the door from falling off its hinges in case she ever wanted to walk through it again. Sometimes that's what love looks like before it knows what it is. Not grand gestures. Not declarations. Just someone deciding, quietly and without fanfare, that a thing is worth keeping. And then keeping it. If this story gave you something today, if you stayed all the way to that April morning and felt the spring light through the church windows, then you are exactly who Frontier Hearts was made for. Subscribe to the channel, leave us a like, and tell us in the comments, when did you know? Was it the porch? The bread and the honey? Or that night he said he wasn't asking her to stay today? More stories are coming. More wide skies. More quiet courage. More love that keeps the door from falling off its hinges while it waits. This is Frontier Hearts. Until next time.